Welcome to the SATLUJ News Hour. This is Gina Vigil coming to you from the Phoenix desk, bringing you the top stories from across the globe. Here are today's headlines. 2 more earthquakes hit Turkey and Syria, causing more deaths and leaving many injured. Putin blames the West for the war in Ukraine in a national speech. Italian Prime Minister visits Kyiv amid tensions over war within her coalition. For our top news today, Turkey and Syria have once again been hit by 2 new earthquakes. This comes just 2 weeks after the catastrophic 7.8 magnitude earthquake that devastated large parts of the region. At least 6 people have been killed and hundreds wounded across both countries. The seismic activity was felt in Egypt, Israel, Jordan, and Lebanon. Most of the injuries were caused by people jumping from structures or falling as they fled over rubble and walls. With much of the earthquake zone already in ruins and a few people remaining in hardest hit areas, casualty figures were relatively low. The streets were filled with people who had also evacuated their houses and shelters. In advance of an election that will be held in May, Turkish President Erdogan faces growing pressure to explain how so many buildings so easily collapsed. In the aftermath, a spotlight has been cast on the widespread provision of homes that did not meet earthquake standards, with increasing calls for construction standards to be enhanced in Turkey and developing countries around the world. Russian President Vladimir Putin points fingers as he made a combative State of the Nation speech, blaming the West for the war in Ukraine ahead of the first anniversary of the invasion he ordered. Putin spoke in front of a crowd of 1,400 people in Moscow, addressing members of both House of Parliament, military commanders, and soldiers, while video screens were also put up in large cities across the country. Putin sought to justify the invasion, saying it had been forced on Russia, and he understood the pain of the families of those who had fallen in battle. He also said Russia would suspend participation in the New START treaty, which limits their strategic nuclear arsenals. Putin said that Russia needed to be ready to test nuclear weapons if the United States moves to do so itself.
Такие неглупые люди. Нам стратегическое поражение хотят нанести и лезут на наши ядерные объекты. В этой связи вынужден заявить сегодня о том, что Россия приостанавливает свое участие в договоре о стратегических наступательных вооружениях. В этой ситуации Министерство обороны России и Росатом должны обеспечить готовность к испытанию российского ядерного оружия. Первыми мы, разумеется, этого делать не будем. Но если США проведут испытания, то и мы проведем. Ни у кого не должно быть опасных иллюзий, что глобальный стратегический паритет может быть разрушен.
Almost immediately, global powers such as NATO urged Moscow against withdrawing. Taiwan is back at it again as the country is bolstering its military ties with the United States and will cooperate even more closely with other friendly nations to deal with authoritarian expansionism. The bipartisan delegation, including Ro Khanna from California and Tony Gonzalez from Texas, arrived on the self-ruled island amid heightened tensions between the U.S. and China over an alleged Chinese spy balloon.
在安全议题上，台湾和美国也持续的加强军事交流。未来台湾也会更积极的跟美国以及民主伙伴合作，来因应威权主义的扩张和气候变迁等全球挑战。
Illustrating the strength of ties with the United States, the delegation is on the island after a sensitive visit by a senior Pentagon official. While the United States no longer maintains military bases in Taiwan, the country's military ties have deepened as China has stepped up pressure on the island, which it claims as its own. The U.S. is the island's most important international backer and arms supplier. China is in the spotlight once again as China's foreign minister, Qin Gang, is deeply concerned about the year-old conflict in Ukraine, which appeared to be intensifying and even getting out of control.
中方对冲突不断加剧，甚至导致失控，深感忧虑。我们将继续劝和促谈，为政治解决乌克兰危机提供中国智慧，与国际社会一道，共同推动对话协商，解决各方关切，谋求共同安全。
Beijing initiated a no-limits partnership with Moscow shortly before Russia's invasion of Ukraine last February, and has avoided using the word invasion or condemning Russian actions in the East European country. The United States has warned of consequences if China provides military support to Russia, which Beijing said it was not doing. Qin said during a speech, "We urge certain countries to immediately stop fueling the fire," also stressing the fact that China would work with the international community to promote dialogue and consultation, address the concerns of all parties, and seek common security. Top diplomat Wang Yi also said, "We would like a political solution to provide a peaceful and sustainable framework to Europe," adding that the world was riven by disorder and wars, and a peace-loving country should bring the current hostilities to a halt as soon as possible. Coming up next, the European Union imposes new sanctions on military-ruled Myanmar. Stay with us. We will be right back after the break. Hello, my name is Gina.
Do you ever wonder what's behind the news? What is it that you are not being told? Going behind the news and finding the truth. Let the truth flow. SATLUJ Network. Let the truth flow.
Welcome back. This is the SATLUJ Network from the Phoenix desk. The European Union gets strict as they have imposed asset freezes and travel bans on 16 individuals and entities in military-ruled Myanmar over grave violations of human rights inside the country. On the list are politicians and administrators in Myanmar's largest city, Yangon, who were said to be involved in the executions of 4 pro-democracy activists in July 2022, and who oversaw massacres, air raids, and used civilians as human shields during military operations in the country's northern Kachin state. The list also includes the energy minister, influential businessman, and high-ranking officers. The EU condemned rights violations including sexual violence, the persecution of civil society workers, human rights activists, journalists, and civilians, including air raids on schools and hospitals carried out by the military regime. Yesterday, it was United States President Biden. Today, it's the Italian Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, who arrived in Kyiv to meet the Ukrainian President, Volodymyr Zelensky. The visit comes to reiterate Italy's support for the war-torn country as she navigates tensions on the issue within her right-wing alliance and divided public opinion. The trip is seen as one of the most significant made by Meloni since she came to power in October, and comes a week after her coalition partner, Silvio Berlusconi, the Forza Italia leader, blames Zelensky for Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Meloni is assuming a political risk with her unwavering support of Ukraine, given more than 50% of Italians are against sending weapons to the country and are skeptical of sanctions. The United Nations Security Council has expressed deep concern and dismay over Israel's settlement activity in a statement replacing a draft resolution that would have explicitly condemned Israeli policies. The Council's presidential statement also underscored what it called the obligation of the Palestinian Authority to renounce and confront terror. The symbolic measure came in response to a decision by the Israeli government earlier this month to authorize thousands of settlement units in the occupied West Bank and retroactively legalize unlawfully built settlement outposts. The council said that the Security Council reiterates that continuing Israeli settlement activities are dangerously imperiling the viability of the two-state solution based on the 1967 lines. Journalism is in danger in Bangladesh as the only newspaper of Bangladesh's main opposition party halted printing after a government suspension order was upheld, stoking fears about media freedom in the South Asian nation. The Dainik Dinkal, a broadsheet Bengali language newspaper, has been a vital voice of the Bangladesh Nationalist Party for more than 3 decades. It employs hundreds of journalists and press workers. It covers news stories that the mainstream newspapers, most of which are controlled by pro-government businessmen, rarely do. Campaigners in foreign governments, including the United States, have long expressed worries about efforts by Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to silence criticism and what they see as creeping authoritarianism. The newspaper said the Dhaka district authorities ordered the shutdown on December 26, but it continued to publish after making an appeal at the Press Council, headed by a top high court judge. Coming up next, South Korean court landmark ruling recognizes same-sex couples' rights. Stay with us. We will be right back after the break.
Life is not scripted, never foretold. No matter what happens and where it happens, open your eyes and read between the lines. And never stop asking questions or wanting to know more. Discover the unknown. Hear the human story. Be impartial. Be courageous. Find the untold story. And keep the pioneering spirit alive. Committed to truth. SATLUJ Network. Let the truth flow.
Welcome back. This is the SATLUJ Network from the Phoenix desk. Good news for the LGBTQ+ community in South Korea, as the court has delivered a landmark ruling by recognizing the rights of a same-sex couple for the first time. Activists hailed the verdict as a major victory for LGBTQ equality in the country. The ruling in the case was brought by a gay couple, So Seong-wook and Kim Young-min. So had sued South Korea's National Health Insurance Service in 2021 because it had terminated benefits for his partner, Kim, whom he had registered as a dependent after the service discovered they were a gay couple. Lawyer Ryu Min-hee said the Seoul's High Court's ruling is the first recognition of the legal status of a same-sex couple. Activists have long emphasized the need for legislation against discrimination based on sexual orientation, and a much-discussed anti-discrimination law has been overlooked in the South Korean parliament for years, due to a lack of consensus among parliamentarians. The latest scandal coming in from Europe as Isabel Pardo de Vera, Spain's Secretary of State for Transport and the head of the state rail company, has resigned amid continuing public and political anger. The move comes after dozens of new trains ordered for 2 northern Spanish regions were too big to fit through some tunnels. 3 years ago, the state rail operator, Renfe, announced plans to modernize the rolling stock on narrow-gauge commuter trains and medium-distance trains in Asturias and Cantabria. But it was revealed last month that the trains being built under the contract would be too wide to pass through some of the tunnels in the 2 regions. Miguel Angel Revilla, the regional president of Cantabria, described the project as a bodge and called for urgent action, while Adrian Barbon, the president of neighboring Asturias, said he was baffled, angered, and disappointed, not to mention the president of Renfe, Asias Teboas, also resigned. The government has, however, previously been at pains to insist that the errors had been spotted before any train was built and that not a single euro of Spaniards' money has been wasted as a result. The latest news in social media as Twitter is removing text message two-factor authentication for non-subscribers. In a tweet by Twitter support, after March 20th, only Twitter Blue subscribers will be able to use text messages as their two-factor authentication method. Two-factor authentication, meant to make accounts more secure, requires an account holder to use a second authentication method in addition to a password. Twitter allows two-factor authentication by text message, authentication app, and a security key. Twitter owner Elon Musk tweeted "Yup" in reply to a user tweet that the company was changing policy because telcos used bot accounts to pump 2FA SMS, and that the company was losing $60 million a year on scam SMS. Big changes are happening in the United Kingdom as Professor Dame Angela McLean is to replace Sir Patrick Vallance as the government's chief scientific advisor, making her the first woman to hold the role. Dame Angela is currently the Ministry of Defense's chief scientific advisor and an expert on the spread of infectious diseases at Oxford University. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who selected Dame Angela, said the role was vital in enabling the government to harness science to improve public services, create jobs, and grow the economy. She will take over the role of providing independent scientific advice to the Prime Minister and members of the Cabinet on the 1st of April, after the end of Sir Patrick Vallance's 5-year term. She will also advise on aspects of science and technology policy and work to improve the quality and use of scientific evidence and advise in government. And those were our top stories for today. Thank you for joining us. This is the SATLUJ Network, the news network that lets truth flow. For more information and the full story coverage, go to satlujnetwork.com. And we'd love to hear your feedback at info@satlujtv.com. We will see you next time.